But things changed. I'm a father now.
Wait, hold up. My bad. That's actually the trailer for Fast and the Furious. Let me just go ahead and boom. Okay, I think I got it.
What is this place?
I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you got yourself killed.
Howdy y'all, Andy here, and welcome to another episode of King's Comics. Today we'll be reviewing the Bloodshot movie, one of the first superhero movies to come out in wide release based on a non-Marvel or DC character. This being said, it's actually funny because this character belongs to Valiant Comics, who haven't gotten a lot of spotlight, even though Bloodshot is one of their most popular characters. In this movie, Vin Diesel portrays Ray Garrison, a soldier who is killed and then brought back to life by the Bloodshot Project, a project meant to superpower soldiers with nanites so that they can recover, become stronger, faster, pretty much the nanomachine version of Captain America. As I mentioned, it's one of the first comic book movies to be based on a non-DC or Marvel superhero. This movie had a lot to prove, and I went into it with little to no expectations. So what did I think about it? Well, I'm going to break it down and tell you what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and whether or not I recommend it and who I recommend it for. So let's go. We start off the movie by seeing Ray Garrison deployed in active combat to alleviate a hostage situation. This way we get to see a lot of his military acumen and the fact that he is a very skilled and trained soldier. From there we go into discussing his romance life, the fact that he's got a wife, as well as what charges the events of the movie going forward, which is this vendetta or this revenge-fueled quest to avenge his wife who was killed because of his actions. Honestly, this is where we start to go into things that I didn't immediately like about the movie, but I'll touch on them later. But what did I like about the movie as we progressed? One, I liked Vin Diesel's portrayal of Ray Garrison. Don't get me wrong, this is a pretty kind of cliche action hero movie, but seeing as Vin Diesel is someone who is very built and has that kind of stature to him, I think he was a good pick in some regards to portray this character on screen. He seemed to at times be enjoying himself in the role, and he also carried a lot of the events of the movie in terms of acting, which can at the same time be a weird thing to peg for Vin Diesel, but when he's invested in a role, I think it's easy to tell, and there were times in the movie where it was apparent that I think he was enjoying himself. This also lends itself to a lot of the action sequences and design in the movie. I really liked a lot of the nanite design, even though it was very heavily CGI based. I liked the nanites and his healing factor and how his powers were represented for the most part within the movie. It was cool getting to see him torn apart and then just regenerated with all these nanites and this technology inside of him. We also get to see some other members of this Bloodshot initiative, or these biologically, mechanically enhanced human beings who are part of this same organization that Bloodshot, Ray Garrison, is a part of now. And that's where I think the movie delivered in some aspect from this cool sci-fi-esque perspective. I really liked the robot designs in the movie, as well as just the mechanical features whenever we did get to see some of this more futuristic tech. There were a lot of high-concept robot designs that I really enjoyed. Sure, some of them were pretty flat, but I think a lot of it looked very functional, at least from my perspective. There were also some cool power sets displayed in the film that I do wish we got to see more of, but that do lend themselves to building this world and what is capable with the technology that is in the movie. But those are just some of my glossing overviews of what I liked about the movie. Let's go ahead and tear into what I did not like about this movie. First off, especially as a comic book movie, it felt like this movie was really playing it safe. And by that, I mean it didn't lean too much into a lot of the comic book elements. I mean, it did with respect to the fact that you've got a super soldier that was nanite infused, so you get to take that any which way and it can be cool. But it felt like this movie catered a lot more to action movie cliches and stereotypes.
Where are you going?
I've got unfinished business.
It did seem self-aware at times of these cliches being poured out in the film, but I feel like it didn't touch on that enough to make it truly self-aware overall, or to be a consistent theme through the humor and interactions between characters. My other this is probably my biggest problem, is the fact that, and I'm asking y'all, please do not watch the full trailer if you haven't already, the trailer spoils some pretty cool elements of the film. I feel like there was actually enough going on in this movie that you didn't need to reveal so much in the trailer, but there is a cool twist or two in the movie that we really didn't need to see in the trailer, but I get it. you needed to have people invested in a character that for the most part they might not otherwise be invested in. But at the same time, this goes into why it's hard to develop non-Marvel or DC superhero movies. You need to have a way to draw in audiences and give them a reason why they should go see a Valiant comic or Image comic superhero, something more indie, so to speak. And that does cater to why you would have to reveal a little bit more in the trailer. This is just me defending it a little bit, although, once again, I'm not a fan of that in any case. Even Marvel and DC do this at times, and I would say it makes sense for them, but it makes more sense for this small-time superhero to be going wide release and to have to make a bigger case for why you should see this movie. Then we get into the overall acting and just dialogue in the movie. I felt that there was a lot of good humor going on in the movie. I should have mentioned that in my likes first, but it kind of started to cater more towards a dislike, I would say, because a lot of the acting was pretty static. There was kind of some thin motivations behind some of the characters, and it seemed not all actors were on the same page about some of the scenery or some of the interactions going on, or why they had certain maybe hostilities or reservations or even certain tendencies. This follows a lot into those action movie cliches I mentioned, where you had this chance to develop a lot richer of a world and a lot more character development that ultimately fell flat in a lot of regards for me. And lastly, as my final major gripe, this movie just turned into an all-out CGI gore fest near the end. I mean, it was already PG-13, so there wasn't a lot you could get away with for a character called Bloodshot in a PG-13 movie that you were trying to make like kind of family-friendly. But there was just a lot of violence and then a lot of huge combat scenes at the end that started to, you could clearly tell CGI was being used, especially if you just freeze frame on some of the character designs and like just interstitial animation. So that was kind of disorienting, some kind of, I don't know, uncanny valley stuff. I don't know what you would call it. But that was something that just kind of threw me for a loop in some of the action sequences. Overall, did I like it? Did I not like it? Once again, I went into this movie with little to no expectations, so I'll say right up front, I enjoyed it immensely more than I thought I would. I'm not saying it's the greatest movie, and I'm not saying it stands up to some of my favorite Marvel and DC movies. But at the same time, I think taking a huge risk like bringing a Valiant comic book superhero to the big screen and doing a wide release was a huge chance to capitalize on this market, but also a huge chance to fail. I think this movie did a very good job at making a case for how non-Marvel and non-DC superhero movies can work. But those are my overall likes and dislikes and overviews. I liked it, and if I wanted to recommend it for anyone, I would recommend it, yes, for people who of course like comic book movies and superhero movies, but honestly, if you're just wanting a good action movie with some fast-paced action sequences, a lot of cool technology, as well as some pretty good humor throughout, to be honest, then I just recommend this. Go, enjoy yourself. I would say, I'm not trying to hype it up, but I am saying I personally think if you're an action comic book or superhero movie fan, then you will enjoy this movie. But that's all I got for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of King's Comics. If you liked today's video, please hit the like button. And if you really liked today's video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And of course, if you have any comments, feedbacks, maybe you want to discuss some things about the movie or the comic books, I'd love to hear what you have to say. I've been thinking about doing a comic book review for Bloodshot, but at the same time, that all depends on the time and interest in the character. That being said, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of King's Comics, y'all, and I'll be talking to you again real soon.